This is lesson 6.3, rotations. So bell work is just a review on reflections. As you can see, rotations are just a turn. Okay, so that F is just being turned around the origin. Now to do this, we have to make sure we know the difference between clockwise and counterclockwise. You know what a clock looks like, and you know which way a clock goes. It goes around this way, right? So this is called clockwise when we go in this direction, all right? Counterclockwise would just be the opposite, so the way that a clock doesn't go. This is counterclockwise. Okay, so just make sure you know the difference between clockwise and counterclockwise. Another thing we need to know is how many degrees are in each turn. If you look at this guy right here, hopefully you already know that is a 90-degree angle. So this would be a 90-degree turn. If I were to start here and go this way, that would be 90 degrees. Okay, let me put this up here. Oops. All right, let's put this guy over here. So that is 90 degrees right there. And if we look at our coordinate plane here, if we break it into 4 quadrants, which hopefully you've already learned about, I didn't really talk about it this year, but you should have learned it already in 7th grade. So we have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Well, if I were to turn all the way around, like starting here and go all the way around, hopefully you know how many degrees that is. Turning all the way around is 360 degrees. So every time I turn to one different quadrant, we just said this is 90 degrees. If I want to turn again, well, that's a total of 180. Each quarter turn is 90 degrees. So as you can see, if I put this one here, 90 plus 90 is 180. So that whole thing going from here all the way to here is 180 degrees. Okay, if I were to go 3/4 of the way around, that would be 270 degrees. Which way am I going here? Am I going clockwise or counterclockwise? Yes, I'm going counterclockwise, okay? So 270 degrees clockwise would be also the same as going if I'm starting here. Let me do it in a different color. If I was starting here and I want to go to the same spot, it would be the same as going 90 degrees clockwise. So again, 270 degrees counterclockwise is the same as going 90 degrees clockwise. If I were to go 180 degrees clockwise, so we'll start here. 180 degrees clockwise is this way. Well, that's the same as 180 degrees counterclockwise. So 180 is the same either way, and 90 degrees on one is 270 on the other. So if we were to just look at a point for a second, I'm going to put a dot right here. Ignore these things now, we'll take these away. If I want to rotate that 90 degrees counterclockwise, we're going to, I just said counterclockwise, I think, right? So counterclockwise would be this way. I want to rotate it 90 degrees, so it's going to go from quadrant 4 to quadrant 1 in that same spot. So there it is. I just moved it there, 90 degrees. If I want to take the same original dot and move it 180 degrees, clockwise or counterclockwise, it's going to land in the same spot. It's going to land over here. So we're going 2 quadrants away when it's 180 degrees. So if I go counterclockwise, it's that way. If I go clockwise, it's that way. Okay, so that's the difference between clockwise and counterclockwise. Let's do some work together. So now I need you to get a piece of paper, graph paper, and I use the size of a bell work sheet, and go ahead and make this graph. You can pause the video, make the graph, and put the dot where it is. All right, so if you have the dot where it is, we're going to go ahead and play with this here. We want to rotate this point, which is at 2, 5, 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, remember clockwise goes this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and you're going to take your piece of paper and turn it with me. So we're going to go clockwise. So here it is. We're going to go clockwise, 1/4 turn. 90 degrees is 1/4 turn. There you go. We turned it 90 degrees clockwise. Now let's just read the point. Now this is our new y and new x. So if you read that point, it's, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the x, and down 2, so that's a -2. So when we turned it 90 degrees clockwise, our new coordinates are 5, -2. Okay, I want you to do this turning with me. We're going to do it again. So you hold your piece of paper how it was in the beginning, where it's at 2, 5, and now we're going to rotate it 180 degrees clockwise again, right? Clockwise. So now that's 2/4 turns. So here we go. 1/4 turn was here. 2/4 turns would be there. And just read your point, okay? It's now here. Now this is the y, this is the x. We're at -2 on the x. I'll just put it right here. And we're down at -5. There's also an algebraic way to do this, which we will see shortly, but I wanted to show you this way first. Let's do a couple more. Hold it up normal, how we had it in the beginning. We're going to go 270 degrees clockwise. Okay, so here we go. 1/4, that's 90. 2/4, that's 180. 3/4 would be 270. Okay, and now if we read it with y and x here, we have -5 on the x-axis, 2 on the y-axis. All right. What if we were to go counterclockwise 270 degrees? Hold it up straight how it was in the beginning, and now we're going to go the other way, counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. Okay, so 270, that's 3 turns, right? So we got to go counterclockwise, that's this way. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Notice that was the same as when we turned it 90 degrees clockwise. And we're going to get 5, -2. All right, what if we have a shape? Can you draw that shape? You can use another piece of paper if you'd like, or on the same piece of paper, I don't mind. We're not going to copy down the coordinates this time, we're just going to turn it and see what it looks like. So once you have your triangle down, you can move with me here. We're going to rotate it first 90 degrees clockwise. So here we go, 90 degrees. Notice it comes down into quadrant 4. It started up here at quadrant 1, and it moved down to quadrant 4. Okay, if we take that same thing, start here again, and do it, the second one is to do it 180 degrees clockwise, so it's going to go 2 quadrants away, right? So 1 quadrant here, and 2 quadrants, so it goes from quadrant 1 to quadrant 3. And then, of course, to go 270 degrees, if we start back up at the top here, would just be 3 turns. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's do some algebraic here. So this is in your textbook, so you don't need to write this down, just look for now. Let's look at this first model here with the blue and green triangle, the first one. This is showing a 90-degree rotation. So we're starting at triangle ABC here. And we're rotating, as you can see, 90 degrees clockwise, right? We're going clockwise this way. So it's landing 1 quadrant over, all right, into this A prime, B prime, C prime. All right, so if you look at the symbols down here, what happens? All right, so your original XY changes to y comma negative x. So the x gets flipped over into the y coordinate and made the opposite sign. Let's look at that for a second. B, right here, is negative 3, 1. And look at B prime is 1, 3. That's B prime here is at 1, 3. So what happened with the x? Again, x should be going into the y's place and made opposite. So here's x, it's going into the y's place and made the opposite. Negative 3 becomes positive 3 in the y part, the y portion. And then the y just comes over here and sits in the x spot. So here's the y, it came over here and sat in the x spot. Let's look at that again. Let's look at the second one. The second one is a 180-degree rotation. So this one is rotating, as you see here, 2 quadrants away, 180 degrees. And if you look at B, started at negative 3, 1, same thing. And B prime is now at 3, negative 1. That's right here, 3, negative 1. Well, let's look at what it says right here. So if you rotate it 180 degrees, either way, counterclockwise or clockwise, then your x is going to stay where it is. It's just going to be made opposite. So the x stayed where it was. It's still in the x spot, but we made it the opposite sign. And the y does the same thing. It stays where it is in the y spot. It's just made opposite. So the 1 became a negative 1. We're just making opposite signs. All right. And then we have the 270-degree rotation. All right. And that's going to do this. Okay, let's look here. So the x gets moved into the y spot. Stays the same. Whereas the y gets moved into the x but made opposite. And you can see that happens here as well. All right, so we're going to look at this now on our graphic organizer. Okay, so you're on your graphic organizer, the yellow sheet that you have, and we're looking at rotations. Make sure you're on the spot that says rotations. It's the third one down, I believe. All right, and you're going to add this to it. Turns a figure around a point. A rotation is a turn. Okay. Let's also highlight or underline this stuff here. We want to know that it turns the shape. It turns the way the shape is facing. So that is significant to know. And also that it maintains the shape and size and everything else. But those are the most important parts. If it maintains its size and shape, there's a vocabulary word that we know there. Do you remember what it is? I'm going to write it over here. It stays congruent. Same size, same shape. It's at the bottom of your graphic organizer if you forget. All right. And then over here to the right, this is your algebra, we'll call it, okay? This is how we can do it using algebra. So if it's 90 degrees clockwise, this is what you're doing. Your x, right, gets moved over here, made opposite, and the y gets moved into the x spot. And we remember that 90 degrees clockwise is the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise. So if I asked you for either one of those, we would be using this formula right here. Okay? So that's 90 degrees clockwise, which is the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise. Then you have here the 180 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise because they're the same. We saw that already. They just flip them to opposite. So x becomes the opposite sign, and y also becomes the opposite sign. And then if we have 90 degrees counterclockwise, well, that's the same as 270 degrees clockwise. Make sure you have this written down, the things in red. It's not on your sheet already. And then you have right here, that would be the formula you would use to find it. Okay, so leave this out because we are going to need this to help us do our problems. If you really are way confused by the end of the lesson, You can't do that algebra with the x and y switching around. Just do the turn of the paper and read your new points. Okay, so we're going to do it doing the algebra. Now we're on our packet, page 3, or page 4, is it? One of those. You'll find it. Looks like this. Graph the image of the figure using the transformation given. Okay, we are rotating 180 degrees. Notice it doesn't say clockwise or counterclockwise because it's the same thing. All right, so when we use clockwise or counterclockwise 180 degrees, I have this right here, but you have your paper with you. Okay, we're using this one, right? So our x just gets made opposite and the y gets made opposite. So let's write down our original coordinates. H, over here. H is down here. That looks like -3 and -5. Right, this is my x, this is my y. So it's at -3, -5. We have J over here at -5, -3. I'm just reading the coordinates. And Q is at 0, -1. Okay. So that's our original dots. Okay, and then our H prime, J prime, Q prime, we're going to do this right here. Make each one the opposite. This one I think is the easiest one to do. So all you're doing is whatever H was, make them opposite. So instead of -3, we're going to have +3. Instead of -5, +5. All right, same thing with J. J was -5, -3. So now we're going to have +5, +3. Then we look at Q. Okay, we have 0, -1. What's the opposite of 0? It's still 0. Opposite of -1 is 1. So those are our new coordinates, and we need to put them on the graph. So here we go. H is at 3, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be here. Label that H prime. J prime is at 5, 3. Let's see, this is J prime, and Q prime is at 0, 1. Okay, that's Q prime. Try to do straight lines if you can. There you go. All right, that's that for that problem. I wanted to show you quickly. Obviously, you're not going to erase your paper. I just wanted to erase to show you something. If I only did this for this one. There we go. Watch this. We are 180 degrees. That's 1, 2 turns. Doesn't that look like what you just made? Of course, they have primes there. Yes. Okay. Number 2, rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. All right, so we're looking down here, 90 degrees counterclockwise. That's the guy down here. So this is my formula. All right, let's get our original coordinates first. B is at 4, 5. L is at 5, 0. And S is at 2, 2. Okay, so we're going to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise. And that means the X gets moved over into the Y spot. The Y gets moved over into the X spot and made opposite. So look at this one. 4 is the X, 5 is the Y. We are going to flip them around first. 5 would come first, 4 would come second, but I need to make this first one in the end opposite. So this one's going to be negative. So it should be -5, 4. All right, L. 5, 0. So let's change them around. It's 0, 5. I would make the first one negative, but -0 is just 0. So that remains like that. and 2, 2, well that's easy, so 2, 2, the first one is opposite. Okay. Pause the video, see if you can do the next one. After you've had a chance to do this one, let's see if you got it right. Did you get these for your original coordinates? Okay. And for the next coordinates, your image, if we're rotating 90 degrees clockwise, you should have been using this one right here, where we move the X over, make it opposite, and just move the Y, leave it the same. So when we move X, do it one at a time. I moved, oh, never mind. We'll move the X, which was a -5. Oh, didn't work. My board's not working. All right, we got it. All right, so we started at -5, 1. I moved the -5 into the Y spot and made it the opposite sign, and I took the 1 and just put it in the X spot. Okay, and the same thing with everything else. Double check that those are correct. And there's your graph. And that makes sense to me. It did 1/4 turn. All right, pause the video, do number 4. All right, 180 degrees about the origin. All right, this time we're using, can't get a spot where this would be good. This time we're going to use this one, so 180 degrees. Either way, you're just making them opposite, keeping the X and Y in the same spots, but making them opposite. So here's your originals. And I just made all the signs opposite. Since they were all negative, now they're all positive. And to me, that does look like a 180-degree turn halfway around the coordinate plane. All right, number 5. Okay, we have a rotation 90 degrees about the origin. So we're just going to go ahead and graph this. So U is at 1, -2. W is at 0, 2. K is at 3, 2. And G is at 3, -3. Connect our dots, make our shape. And we're doing 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, go to your worksheet. 90 degrees clockwise is this. Okay, so X goes into the Y spot, Y comes into the X spot. And we got to make the new Y negative. So for U, I'm going to do it right here. So U prime, we have, well, we're going to flip them around. So the 2 is going to come first. Two is going to come first. So you have -2, and we're going to make the 1 second, but we have to make that second one negative. Okay, W. All right, flip them around. 2 is going to come first, 0 is going to come second. I can't make 0 negative, so it's done. K prime, flip them around. 2, 3, make the second one negative. And G prime, flip them around. It's still a -3 and a 3, but then the second one gets made opposite. -3. All right, I'm going to do this one in blue so I can see the difference here. U prime is at -2, -1. W prime is at 2, 0. K prime is at 2, -3. And G prime is -3, -3. Does that look like 1/4 turn clockwise to you? It does to me. Pause and try the next one, please. 180 degrees about the origin. Remember, you're just going to change the signs of X and Y. All right, here it is. Your originals were right up here. So your new ones are just the opposite signs. -2, 0, -1, -3, -5, 0. And I graphed both of them, and that's what it looks like. And that, to me, looks like going halfway around. Okay, something went wrong there. There. Now it looks like halfway around. All right. So now we can just do it algebraically again, and all they're doing is giving us the coordinates, and we are first rotating 180 degrees about the origin, so just opposite signs. Opposite signs, opposite signs, opposite signs, opposite signs. All right, number 8. Again, 180 degrees, opposite signs. Let's do it together here. So L prime is just opposite, opposite. Z prime, opposite, opposite. F prime, opposite, opposite. Okay. Then we have 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, here it is. The X gets moved into the opposite spot and made negative. So you're flipping them around and you're going to make the second guy negative. Think about that. Flip them around, one in -4, but then you make the second one negative or opposite. Okay, 1, 0, flip them around, make the second guy opposite. And the last one, flip them around, make the second guy opposite. And then we have another 180 degrees. That's just making them opposite. We're not flipping anything anywhere. So B prime is just opposite sign, opposite sign. A prime, opposite sign, opposite sign. And G prime, opposite, opposite. Okay? The last one, we're just going to write a rule. You're just going to tell me how many degrees and which direction. There are going to be more than one answer for each problem because you can go clockwise or counterclockwise. Don't forget, the original is going to not have any primes next to it, where the image will have primes. All right, so we're going from my black one to the blue one. Yours are not colored, obviously, so we can do this 2 ways. We can turn it this way, one turn, which is 90 degrees, or we can turn it this way, which is going to be 270. So 90 degrees clockwise or 270 counterclockwise. Either answer is fine. You don't need to have both. For this next one, number 12, they're on kind of opposite sides, I would say. Is that how you would say it? Let's see. To me, that's going the same distance either direction. That's 180 degrees, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't matter. You can just say 180 degrees. Okay. This one is the same. To me, that looks like 180 degrees either direction. So 180 degrees is fine. And see if you can do the last one. Pause the video. And that one is as well 180 degrees. Okay. At this point, you can check Google Classroom for any assignments.